Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, dear attendees. So it's today time for a new Quality Monthly presented by under the flag of the IRQB, the International Rail Quality Board. And I'm really delighted to have all of you listening to our presentation for today. So you already answered the first Menti question. As usual, for those who are following us regularly, we use this platform to investigate a little bit what are different aspects. And today again, we will have several questions at the audience. Please use the www.menti.com website and the code, which is written on the top of the slide, to answer and to give your point. So today there is a specific topic. Next slide, please. And as said, the topic today is small and medium-sized enterprises. That's what we will discuss today, because there is a very important point, because the SMEs plays a major role in the rail sector, in the frame of the supply chain, and globally said in the value chain of the railway sector. We have quite a lot of active certificates today in the IRIS certification from small and medium-sized companies, and you will discover also some data later on in this session. Today, in terms of speaker, I'm really glad to introduce our panel. Next slide, please. First, we will have Roger Dierksmeyer. He is Managing Director Rail System at Fogtech, but he has also important roles within IFE because member of the presiding board, but also chair of the Small and Medium-Sized Enterprise Committee within IFE. So someone who has really a good information, good knowledge about what happens in the European area with the small and medium-sized companies. As well, Ronald Heidelmann is Managing Director at GHH Radplatz. He's member of the IRIS Steering Committee and the IRQB board, and he will also welcome you in a few minutes in the name of this board. Yan Waju is working in the supply quality management organization of Siemens Mobility, will give us the insight of a system integration towards the supply chain. Finally, Jana Jung, IRIS Development Manager, will tell you how we have worked to simplify the work for SMEs towards the IRIS scheme, which might be seen as difficult and very complete through the IRIS guideline, and she will give you here a lot of information as well at that level. So now I will immediately hand over the floor to Ronald Heidelmann for introduction for this IRQB monthly. Enjoy this time with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernhard. Can we have the next slide, please? I'd like to also welcome you cordially today for our meeting on behalf of the IRQB. What is exactly IRQB? IRQB is the International Rail Quality Board, consisting of a consortium of the system integrators, Tier 1, Tier 2 suppliers, as well as operators, mainly operators of the national railways, but also partially of other railway systems, for example, coming out of the cities. An interesting figure, Bernhard started the meeting saying we have interesting figures. One figure is that we have 3,422 members participating actively on the IRIS portal. What does active participation mean? This means that there are either these companies are certified or intend to be certified. Out of the 3,422 companies, alone 2,837 participants or members are small, medium-sized companies. This means 83% out of the total volume are small and medium-sized companies. This shows how interesting and how important this subject, IRIS, is for small, medium-sized companies. And small, medium-sized companies are the suppliers of the system integrators, respectively, of the operators. quality management, product quality, and the system itself, quality management system, is very, very important throughout the whole supply chain. And that's why we're addressing you today in this session to give you more background information. What is important? What is IRIS behind it? Is it just some kind of a standard which has been presented where we say, okay, the operators would like to have it, or the system integrators? One answer is yes, partially, but on the other hand, we have to say IRIS has huge advantages, brings huge advantages along with itself to improve our own companies. And I'm speaking for myself as managing director of a small, medium-sized company. Thank you.
So now I will hand over the floor to Roger from FogTech, who will give you the view of his company, but also as the representative of the SMEs within UNIFE. Roger, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Bernard. Thanks a lot, Ronald, for the words before. And you both said something which I think is really important. You said that the role of SMEs is really important. We SMEs maybe even a little bit more self-confident and say we are part of the backbone of the railway industry. And you see it also from the numbers which are in certification procedures or already certified. There's a huge number of companies already committed to IRIS. But what does it mean, IRIS, for SMEs? And I would like to give a short inside view from an SME to SMEs to give an understanding how we see that and which points we could observe during the last years in this field. So may I can have next slide, please? Just a quick background information that you know who's speaking to you. FogTech is an owner-managed company which is already established more than 20 years ago. It's a classical SME per European definition with around 160 employees and less than 50 million turnover. We are IRIS certified since 2011. Today we have this nice paper showing that we are also on the silver status. The railway business in our company makes approximately 40% of the turnover, and we are system and component supplier, including the relevant engineering services. We are worldwide active, and as you also can see from the map below, and as Bernard already explained, my heart is beating for SMEs, as I'm also the chairman of the UNIFE SME committee, as well as representing the SMEs in the presiding board of UNIFE. Next slide, please. This is a little bit shrink down the graphic which we already saw from Ronald, just showing the certified companies, as we see that the parts of the SME is a really big one. Of course, if you calculate on people working, on employees, maybe it's even the smaller part, as we have also a lot of large companies here. But in total certified companies, we are covering nearly 80% with the SMEs. And as I said, we are one of them. We are certified since 2011. And after some doubts at the beginning, to be very honest, but I will tell you something about later, today I would say it was totally the right decision. Next slide, please. What was our motivation when we started that, when this IRIS was quite new for us also during this time when we've looked in first time 2008, I think 2009, something around that, if I'm right. It was not the aim to get the final paper, not the certificate, but we understood that this procedures, this certification procedure could help us to develop our company and to challenge ourselves to get the right position in the market, but also for ourselves. And for today, I have to say that at the beginning, we were hesitating with some of the points. You maybe remember that one of the promises at the beginning was also that numbers of audits will be reduced and things like that. But some of the OEMs at the beginning had really difficulties, I would say, to follow this. So at the beginning, we really were claiming a lot about what IRIS was promising and what was really the reality. But I have to say that during the last years with the development IRIS also did, and also the whole environment in our industry did, that was the right movement into the right direction. Today for us, we see three main topics also, which we would highlight really for ourselves. And this is that IRIS helped us to developing the whole process landscape and including the team. What does it mean? I will explain later, because this is a quite big topic. The whole proceedings in the company, but involving the team. Very important point, and there we sometimes maybe a little bit too strict today, because we learned also so much through these IRIS proceedings about the risk monitoring and management. This brings us also to the point sometimes to stop deliveries because payments are not done, and several things like that, to ensure that the company is sustainable available. Because I think this is a very good tool to develop your suppliers, if you looking from the OEM and operator side, to a sustainable and long-term partner with very good proceedings. And at the end, it's also a very clear commitment to our industry. Next slide, please. If you would ask me about my observations through this year, several years or now, for us 10 years of certification, so we have our IRIS birthday this year. IRIS has a big challenge to cover a lot of different types and sizes of companies under one umbrella. And maybe this was also the part where it became very difficult at the beginning to bring these things all together. But today, this is really good working tool to cover this wide field of applications if you look to the different types and sizes of companies. Very important is that IRIS is not a so-called fixed system. It's not just making tick in a box for all those things. There's some kind of flexibility also in these parts, and to make it usable to the way how your company is working. It's not simply to have a list which you have to fulfill each point. It's also the way how to fill this single points with life and how to proceed in your company. There's a certain flexibility in, and this exactly makes it possible also for small and medium enterprises to follow this. Very important, IRIS, but this is as any quality system always, isn't worth anything without having, without living for it. So this new guideline, IRIS guideline 9, which is explaining about small and medium enterprises, sized enterprises in this field, is a very good tool also to make it even more understandable. And we saw from the slides from Ronald that there's a huge potential also. We had, if I'm right, if I counted right, more than 1,000 SMEs just in the proceeding to get IRIS. So to make it more understandable, it's very good explained in these guidelines here. So next slide, please. Using IRIS in the right way can also help to create a good understanding inside of the company and the right transfer of knowledge within the team for the processes and how to process-oriented work is happening. For the project management office, development department, production, it took us a very long time, to be very honest, until we had it on the way where we wanted to be. And to be honest, there's still gaps we have to make even things better, and we can have room for further developments. But it helps the whole team to understand better how processes have to be linked to each other and how the different departments also have to work together. Today, I can say also that the IRIS certification reduces the number of audits. So it's a true promise by today. Using IRIS in the right way helps also to reduce risks, as I already said, and this is one of the main tools which we really used and developed very detailed in our company, with all the things around lessons learned, proceedings to avoid failures happening again. So I really can recommend, especially for this part, to bring your company to a sustainable way. Sometimes it's a little bit challenging with auditing companies, even to get sometimes dates or to get fast feedback, but if it's working, it's there should be not a problem. But of course, for the realization and then for the continuously proceedings, you should not underestimate the efforts which have to be done. Especially for very small companies, this would be a burden. But I think with the new guideline 9, there's also great help to make it feasible. And at the end, it's a very clear commitment to our industry. And I really would welcome, and this is one point I really would like to mention, this maybe also by heart, it's necessary that IRIS has to be understand as a mandatory requirement from our point of view and should be reflected also in the supplier selection and validation. Because sustainability and long-term cooperation, I think, is one of the most important points for all the OEMs and operators to have suppliers where they can rely on, and this is a very good tool to move into that. But if you come to discussions then about pricing and IRIS is not considered, you make people also frustrated and they ask themselves why we should follow that, even if it's such a good tool. And so my clear recommendation would be to make it even more mandatory, as we see it also from the automotive industry, and to have it as a clear point in the supplier selection validation. Next slide, but I think I'm so far through just to give my overview about that and my experience. And so, of course, available at any time for you for questions and also later during the Q&A. And I would like to give back to Bernhard.
Thank you very much, Roger, for these very important and very clear messages. Indeed, you are right. Don't forget to ask your question via Menti in order that I have the possibility later on to start this Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Meanwhile, now it's time for the second question, and please have a look here about this point, and in 2 minutes then we continue with the presentation of Ronald Seidelmann, and he will give you his point of view regarding these topics. So let's wait 2 minutes that everybody has the time to enter, and then we start the next presentation. Okay, we can already see that there are two favorite topics in the audience. So now let's have the view of Ronald on with his experience in his company. Ronald, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bernhard. And thank you also to Roger for the very open and honest presentation. I think this was very important to have really the point of view from a small, medium-sized company, not only what's good about IRIS, but where do we have the problems and difficulties. I'm managing director of GHH Radsatz with the site in Oberhausen. We belong to a group, GHH Bonner Trans, having its headquarters in Prague. We are a standalone entity in Germany. Our scope is the development, manufacturing, and servicing of wheel sets, running gear, and their components. This means we develop the products ourselves, we test them, then we bring them to serial production, and later on, for overhauling and so on, we do also this work in Oberhausen. Our company exists over 200 years, meaning we're in the railway business practically 200 years. This is very seldom. A lot of modern companies produce steel parts and in 5 years maybe some kind of milk containers and continuously switching back. We are over 200 years in this business. We have 279 employees. Now you might say this is a pretty high number for a small medium-sized company. Maybe we're practically on the brink to go to a large company. Yes. But if I go back in history, when I started here in the industry, this month is 35 years belonging to the company. We started out with 50 employees in the wheelset business. So we had a continuous good growth over time. The sales, our sales per year is approximately 90 million, also continuous stable growth. And we're one of the founding members, I would say, on behalf of the suppliers. We're in the IRQB, respectively the steering committee since 2005. And my intention, my personal intention as member in this committee is to represent the suppliers, not so strong the system integrators, but to also represent on bringing the ideas of the suppliers, our ideas, our problems, that these are also taken into regard. My company itself is certified since 2006. Next slide, please. Right. When I was asked to give you a presentation for the small, medium-sized companies, I sat back and thought, what is really important? What is IRIS? What brought movement into our company here in Oberhausen? Where did we have to work on very intensively? And did it make sense? Taking a look at the evaluation before from the mentee, I've seen that risk management and continuous improvement had both 10 votes, process stability and knowledge management, 2 respectively, 1 vote. What I have to say, from my point of view, everything is interlinked with each other, and all 4 points are important. I'll give you more explanations now. I'll start with the risk management, which was evaluated at the highest level by you. What is really risk management and why is it important, especially for small, medium-sized companies? What is a risk practically? We have financial risks. We have risks that our customers do not accept products due to quality issues, maybe payment issues. We have problems in the supply chain from our suppliers not delivering on time or delivering products with bad quality, or all of a sudden not existing on the market. We need then a second supplier, a third supplier. And the idea for a small, medium-sized company is to reduce the risks as far as possible. This is most important because as a small company or medium-sized company, one risk can break your back as a company. A larger company or a group, they can bear it easier. It's also dangerous, it hurts, but they can bear it easier. For a small, medium-sized company, like I said, it can ruin your company. And what is the subject what IRIS is bringing up? Why is it IRIS so important? It's not the certificate or the certification that's being carried out. It's the tools that are presented and offered to us to manage these subjects. And here the tools are also, how do I identify the risks in my company? That I'm forced to sit down, not only by myself, but do a cross-department analysis, like Roger said, as a team, to identify first the risks, and then to be objective, to try to be objective and evaluate these. There are risks which we say, okay, it's not so important, not so dangerous, and there's other risks where we say, okay, if something happens, would happen, this would be fatal for the company. Derived thereof, we define then the actions. What should we do in order to minimize or reduce the risks? There are risks which I cannot prevent totally. This is clear. This is normal. That's daily life. But I'd like to reduce the risk to a minimum. And the fourth point later on is then to derive actions thereof, to say, okay, what will I do? And I have to follow up on these actions. And what we've seen in our company, for example, not only on the financial side, but also on the concerning product quality issues, that carrying out such a process, risk assessment, analysis, and defining actions to reduce these, this has contributed to a better performance of the group or our company itself. I'll take the second highest point which you had, the continuous improvement. Yes, it's important. And I would say the world is continuously changing. And a manager who would say everything is under control and running perfectly, I tell my managers this, then you're not right in our company. There's always things to be improved in a company. There's always processes that have to be improved. Now, I'm not saying that something we have a failure of some kind. It is still, however, improvement. And improvement that does not come only from the company itself, from your company, but also from the stakeholders, the customers, environmental issues, legal issues, supplier issues, and so on, political issues, where we also have to adjust our processes to these subjects. This is continuous improvement. And what does continuous improvement mean? It doesn't mean that I just sit down and say, okay, let's get better. Let's write something on a piece of paper. How should we do it? And that's what will be done. It is partially derived also from the risk assessment, goes along together with this, where I say, okay, I want to define certain processes and I want to measure these processes. To say I'm good, everyone can say I'm good, but to really bring it onto a figure or show it through a figure, to measure the processes, and okay, for example, my on-time delivery performance is 80%. Is this good? Is this bad? This is something which could be also evaluated on a subjective basis, but you have to say then in the next year, or should say in the next year, I want to be better than the 80%. I might want to reach 82 and afterwards 84 to 85%. That's continuous improvement. In order to achieve this, I have to evaluate the process and later on define, again, actions. So what we see, risk management, the tools, and continuous improvement are practically the same. I identify something, I evaluate it, I define actions, I measure these things, define the actions, and then I realize the actions. And thus I have an improvement of the company and bring my company always forwards. I come to the two other subjects. Process stability. We have a company here in Oberhausen with a very low fluctuation rate. One would say this is great, this is super, the people stick to the company, they get old in the company, they have a good know-how. But what we've seen now, we have a change in the generation. That means a lot of old people are leaving the company and we have bringing in new people and people who are well educated from colleges and universities. And what is the major target of the company? We want reliable, sustainable results. And this means I need a satisfactory level that's not only today, but in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. This calls for process stability. I just cannot sit down and say, okay, everything's working perfectly now, and hopefully tomorrow it will be the same thing. I have to work on the processes, and I have to make sure that they're running on a stable level. And I'm talking about quality not only in production, but also in the upstream processes. We make often the mistakes saying, okay, quality is production or production is quality. No, that's not the subject. IRIS covers the whole spectrum, the supply chain and all the processes within the company. The upstream processes are most important. Do I have the correct methods for production? is my order management acting correctly? Do they order the material on time? Do they order the material I really need according to the specifications and standards which are required also by the customer? Does the customer order correctly? Or in some cases, some customers don't even really know what they're ordering or why they're ordering it. They don't have the detailed know-how. So it is up to us as supplier, also a small, medium-sized company, to tell the customer, listen, did you think about this? Did you take this item into concern, and so on? And this has to be integrated then again in our whole supply chain. This is then stabilizing the process, because if I have any danger in between along the whole line, or anything that's just as it works as a disturbance, the quality of the product, and quality is not only the product quality, but delivery on time, for example, is not on a stable, satisfactory level. I come to the fourth point. Knowledge that is interlinked again with the process stability. The people who are a long time in the company, they secure process stability. What happens if the new people come, younger people? This experience was hard for me to take here in the company in the past 2 to 3 years. I thought, okay, the older goes, the elderly goes, we hire some new people, they're trained by the people who are going, 3 months, half a year, and then everything will run. It was a big mistake. What I've learned through this is I cannot transfer knowledge only orally. I have to define my processes in a written manner. I have to have it on a piece of paper or somewhere online where the successor can read, how is it to be done? How do I carry out certain processes without making mistakes? And how do I improve again my processes in order to adjust according to the new needs of customers, environment, and legal issues? Knowledge management is a very, very important subject in companies, and is forgotten very often. And then you make, and I see it, I said I'm 35 years now in the company. You sit back and a new guy comes in and says, he's 2 years in the company already, and asks the question, says, I have a problem, where you would sit back and say, okay, we had the same problem 10 years ago, we solved it this and this way. He doesn't know it, he can't know it, because these items, the processes, definitions, if they're not on a piece of paper where I read how it can be done, how do I solve certain things, what are the issues, lessons to be learned. If it's not in a written manner, no one can learn it. And thus, we close the complete link with knowledge management, again, to continuous improvement and risk management. And this is what I've said. I was quite surprised about the evaluation carried out on the Menti system, that we say risk management, continuous improvement is important. Process stability, we take it for granted practically, and knowledge management, who cares? We have the knowledge in the company. Everything belongs together, and I think these 4 major points are the most important for small, medium-sized companies in order to improve their performance over the years. And improvement is not only because the customer wants it, but it secures the sustainability of a company. It secures our business for the future. And that's our main intention. Small, medium-sized companies like ours is also in most cases private owned. We want to live a long time. We're not on a stock market. We're not going to be sold and so on. We want to give it to the next generation, and that's sustainability. And you only achieve it if you follow these 4 points, and IRIS is a tool in order to manage it correctly. And the guideline number 9 gives us also examples on how to do it on a low level, calls for efforts and so on, but it's not such a big program that has to be carried out in order to fulfill, I would say now I'm very aggressive, to fulfill auditor expectations, but to fulfill our own expectations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for showing you showing us your expertise in that field, and we understood that you have a large experience in the quality management and in the small and medium-sized enterprise issues and way to come out of that. Thank you again. So now it's time to have a look at the system integrator level and how they manage the supply chain, because as mentioned by our previous speakers, they are part of the supply chain and they have to deliver to a customer, which is generally a system house integrating their products in another equipment or even in a train. So now I hand over the floor to Yanhua Zhu to give us the perspective from Siemens. Yanhua?
Okay, thank you, Bernard. I'm Yanhua Zhu. I'm working at Siemens Mobility in Germany in the area of supplier quality management. My responsible is for quality, for supplier qualification and the supplier development. Siemens is support IRIS certification in our whole supply chain in separate approach. For example, we identify IRIS target suppliers according to IRIS commitment, and we required and motivate those suppliers to be IRIS certified. We sent IRIS motivation letter regularly to those suppliers to clarify our requirement regarding to IRIS, and also to provide our supporting activity. And meanwhile, we perform IRIS-based process audit to those targeted suppliers. That means Siemens Mobility audit our supplier according to IRIS requirements. And in another hand, we also support our supplier with the implementation of IRIS certification. For example, we perform IRIS gap analysis at our supplier site to help this company for identification of weakness and strengths compared with the requirement of IRIS certification. Go to next, please. Yes, during our daily business, especially in the supplier audit, we have identified some common issue in the SME company. The positive point is that this company do daily tasks well, like they have strong performance in production area. But there are also some weakness in terms of process approach, especially in the growth functional process, and in the phase of the planning, review, and more monitoring of the planned activities. During our daily business, meanwhile, we have also received feedback about IRIS from this company directly. And this company worried about creating of a lot of procedure regarding to the 22 processes. They think they have to do a lot of additional paperwork. And they think they have to order additional software because of IRIS. And the worry or the concern, there are some process like design development or EPPS are very complex, and they think it's impossible to implement such a process according to IRIS in this company. And those points and the feedback are considered as input for this EMS guideline. Please go to next. Yes, now I would like to share with you my opinion about this EMS guideline. This guideline summarizes of IRIS certification requirement, especially to the processes, in a very accessible and clear means that can help a working level to understand the requirement of IRIS. And this guideline provides also solution to some items which mostly are point weakness or misunderstanding. And in this guideline, you can find highlights about key points which are very important for IRIS certification. This guideline provides also practically advices and samples for the planning, implementation, monitoring, and improvement. One sample for example, change management. In the guideline, you can see an overview Excel list. It's samples for the company. This can help you to track all the change through whole the business chain. And I think one point is important to know. This guideline is not only for quality manager of the company. That is a very helpful tool for whole the company, particularly for the process owner. This guideline can help process owner to set up, implement process according to IRIS requirement in working level of his area. Now, I would like to say this guideline will convince you to believe the IRIS certification is really doable and implementable for small, medium companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yanhua, for this very interesting focus. I would also personally thank you for the valuable participation in the SME guideline working group and all the inputs you brought to finalize this guideline. And that's now also the time to give the floor to Yana Jung. She will explain you how this guideline was finally born and what we have to share with you in this guideline. Yana?
Yes. Thank you, Bernard. So yes, my name is Yana Jung. I'm the IRIS Development Manager, and I will explain you a little bit how our guideline was set up. So on my next slide, you will see how we came from the idea of a guideline to the real guideline. So if you have already participated in our quality monthlies, you will maybe remember this slide. So at the beginning, of course, there was the idea to have a dedicated guideline for those companies in the small and medium sector who also want to become IRIS certified. Our working group consisted of different members. So we, for example, had Yanhua, who also participated in the working group from Siemens, but we also had other participants from Frauscher and from Thales. So we then set up the draft guideline that was reviewed by our International Ray Quality Board. And now it's finally available on the publications area on our IRQB website. So if we want to check it out, you can go to irqb.com, and there you see under the publications all of our guidelines we have published in the last month. if we go to the next slide, we have prepared a little Mentimeter. So maybe you can give me your feedback. What kind of area of the requirements of ISO TS 22163 could be maybe most challenging? Because all of these areas we have also implemented in our guideline. So we think that, for example, configuration management could be quite challenging, or also change management, as Januar just mentioned, but also maybe the setup of the transfer of processes or of the safety policy would be quite challenging for those who are not familiar to it. So maybe you can give us a little feedback, and then we will later show you how we try to handle some of these chapters. Okay, so we can see there are quite two topics that are most interesting to you. Maybe if we go to the next slide, we can we can tell you that we have prepared not only this guideline, so not only the guideline gives some advice how to address the requirements within a company, but it is also offering some guideline templates. So you will always find in the guideline some basic information regarding the requirements, and you will also find an example of maybe a template, a protocol, or a procedure that can help you to implement it in your company. And we do not only offer these examples on paper, we also offer a file, so an Excel file, where you will find all of these templates in an editable format. So you can use it, you can implement your company data, you can also maybe implement some additional steps. But if you use the templates that we provided, you will always fulfill the minimum requirements of the ISO TS 22163. And by offering also some examples in the guideline, you will maybe have a little guidance how to implement your data or how to implement your information. So maybe we will now have a deeper look inside, because I've selected two examples. So on the next slide, you will find the example for the first article inspection. So here you can see how we build up our guideline. On the left side, you see the text from the guideline itself. It directly tells you by the symbols that we have a knockout question with a mandatory process and mandatory documented information. And it tells you also a little bit about the requirements in words that are easy to understand. And on the right side, you see directly that we have offered a template for the first article inspection. So this can be used by you as a company to conduct your first article inspections and to implement all your data. On the next slide, you will also see the second example that might be quite interesting, because in the Menti we saw that the process reviews are a bit struggling or a bit challenging. And as we know this, also here we have written in the guideline what needs to be considered regarding the conducting of the process reviews, but we also offer a template for a process review that can be used by the companies. And this, you can see it quite good in the examples. It's not only about the mandatory requirements, but it is also having some optional requirements. So if you want to go for a higher maturity level, you can clearly see what is really necessary and what is maybe an add-on that can be used. So hopefully we can, by this example, show you that the guideline for the SMEs is useful and is hopefully also supporting the companies by introducing IRIS certification to their companies. If we go to the next slide, Then you can see if you need some further information. If there's anything that is not clear to you, you can always visit our IRQB website. You can also subscribe for our IRQB bulletin, so then you get the most recent information by us. Or you can also go to the IRIS portal and have a look at the question and answers section. There you will find the most common questions that are asked to you, hopefully answered in a clear way. And if there's anything else you would like to know, you can also contact us. On the next slide, we have a special offer for those of you who are new to IRIS certification. So if you're already a UNIFIL member and want to apply for IRIS certification, there is at the moment some special offer. So everybody receives a free exclusive basic training on IRIS certification, a discounted IRIS certification portal registration, a free copy of the IRIS certification committee assessment, and also a demo version of the IRIS audit tool to support your IRIS certification implementation in the companies. So this was everything. And I would like to hand back to Bernard.
Thank you, Jana, for these explanations on the guideline and to give a flavor on what they can find and in order really to make a success of this document, which was expected by a lot of companies. So now let's go to the question and answer session. I got several questions and I will ask our speakers to give you an additional insight on that. The first question I would ask Ronald, because this topic was already clearly addressed by Roger in its presentation, but maybe Ronald, as a member of the board, of the IRIS board, has also a very clear view on that. The point is about the commitment to the industry for IRIS and towards the SMEs. Ronald, what is your personal point of view on that?
To be open and honest, I mean, we have had these discussions, I would say, in the past decade already. IRIS is over 15 years now on the market. And we have discussed how can we push IRIS forward? How can we achieve acceptance? Why aren't we really quite successful with IRIS being integrated in all companies throughout the whole supply chain? And to have a clear understanding, what I said before already, a supply chain can only function correctly if everyone follows the rules and has stable processes and brings a satisfactory performance. The discussions we had in the past were simply, should it be mandatory, yes or no? And we've seen in other industries, we just take, for example, the car industry or aerospace, there are mandatory standards in place, meaning if you do not fulfill the standard, if you're not certified accordingly, you're not approved as a supplier. We do have difficulties also with some customers. We're very open and honest about this, meaning some customers say we don't need IRIS, we don't want IRIS, we have our own systems and so on. However, my personal opinion is, and this opinion I have since the last 5 to 6 years, where I've always said, make it mandatory. Then we have a stable level for everyone, not only price, but also quality as subjects are taken into consideration. And we have the stable processes and throughout the complete supply chain. It has to be made mandatory in the future somewhere along the line, and future is not for me in 10 years, but within the next 5 years, the moment we're creating a new business plan for IRIS, and this will also be taken into consideration.
Thank you, Ronald, for this very clear statement. Another question, maybe for Roger. If an SME is manufacturing parts for different sectors, so the question is about automotive sector, but can be also for others, and like in your company, as you are not only working for rail, is there then any best practice at level of shop floors or IRIS management, such as common manual, common procedure for the different businesses towards the certification. So, Roger, what is your point of view on that?
To the whole company procedures, we more or less are oriented to the IRIS guidelines, which we design, or processes we designed in accordance to the IRIS standard. Because to be very clear, it's not bad to following such rules also for the other parts if they're not contradictory to other requirements. So means parts of our building industry, for example, run through the same procedures and as we have for the railway parts. So there's no big difference in this. So the standardization of the proceedings was here the bigger part, was the more helping part also for the whole company. Of course, as said, we have to see that it's not contradictory to other standards or requirements. Then for sure, this has to be analyzed more in detail, but this we do not have. So it means our whole company in the manufacturing production part is running according to the IRS standards. For more, actually, I cannot help with own experience, let's say in this way.
So, thank you very much, Roger. Then I would also have a question for Jana. It's linked to the processes. If there is, as you can see, if there is no real demand from the customers, is it mandatory to follow processes like project management, tender management, or another question is linked to RAMS and LCC if I have no design? How is this, or how can this be excluded in the IRIS management system? Jana?
Yes, thank you. So first for RAMS and LCC. So if your company is not performing any design and development activities, then this can be excluded. So RAMS and LCC is then not mandatory for you, but the processes for project management and also for tender management are applicable to all the companies as they are mandatory processes in IRIS certification. But of course, it is always depending on the situation of the company, and especially for project management, I would maybe like you to be a bit more patient, because we will also publish a guideline regarding project management that is also referring to our next quality monthly. And in this guideline, you will see how especially smaller companies or companies working in different fields can apply project management in their processes.
Thank you, Jana. A last question also for Yanhua, for a system house. Do you think that there is, on a worldwide view, not specified on an area like Europe and so on a worldwide view, are there different approaches from the supply chain and the implementation, especially for SMEs, or is for you a common approach done currently?
Okay, thank you, Bernard. I try to share my experience. In the past year, since 10 years, I made a lot of supplier audit in different range area in Europe and Asia. I think it's the basic process is common, because we have to identify risk. We have to management of know-how competence, and to define the process. There is no big difference between the culture or the background. That is, like I mentioned before, that is really is implementable for all the area of the world.
Okay, thank you very much, Yanwa. So our Quality Monthly webinar has come to an end. I would again thank everybody for the participation, as well the speakers for their valuable contribution to animate this hourly debate. And also I would like to thank all the people who have watched this webinar, but also all those who will view and have a look on the video which is published on the IRQB website. So please note also the next Quality Monthly debate. It's planned on the 5th of November, so almost in 1 month. Again at 2 o'clock Central European time, no more summertime at that moment, but time. And the topic, as already disclosed by Jana, is project management, where a new guideline will be published in a few weeks, but anyhow before this next Quality Monthly. Again, thank you very much. Have a nice rest of the day. Have a good night for our Asian colleagues. Good afternoon, good morning still for the American colleagues, and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.